Hello, you're very welcome to AFI Weekly here on the Under Centre podcast. Daragh here with you, joined by Alex Sims this evening. We'll be sure to get into his game against the Vipers at the weekend. But Alex, before we get into that, I'm bringing in a new thing to start off the show, and I'm going to ask you a question of the week. And this week, because everyone's talking about 100 men versus one gorilla, I want to know: do you back 100 AFI players or one gorilla?
Yeah, I mean, depends who you're, who's getting involved. Uh, I think, let's say if I'm involved in it, absolutely the 100. I think the 100 AFI players can take the gorilla, but only because I would approach it with peaceful tactics. You know me, vegetarian, I'm a bit of a pacifist. I just make peace with the gorilla and we become boys.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'd become friends with the gorilla, and Ty Henry would be trying to message him, getting him to join the Mavericks. So, like, I think it'll be a winning combination. We got a new D lineman.
I was going to say you. I don't think you taking part would you end up fighting the gorilla. You'd probably take the gorilla side before you'd have to fight him and go up against 99 AFI players, which you'd obviously have no problem with at all. But if you could give me, give me. I was going to say top 10, but that's maybe too many. Top 5 AFI players that could come to mind to you right now that you could actually think, right, if they were on my team, we may not win, but at least we're going to give it a good chance.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here. I think we're gonna have to go with some big guys to go man to man with the gorilla. Maybe try hold him down, and then maybe some quick guys to try and get some shots in. So let's think. Let's go Robbie Alexander from the Knights. Yeah,
Good
he'd be
start. Yeah.
one of my big guys there. Maybe trying to think who else. One of the linemen from the Trojans, or maybe Paddy Sweeney. To get two big
Yeah.
guys there to,
Yeah.
to, to hold them down. That might do a decent job. And then who can just go through a gorilla, um, like no one else. Who hits the you're trying to think like maybe Kenny McCarthy there from the Rebels, the linebacker. He's hit some
Mm-hmm.
big running backs in his day there. Give me Brandon Atwell. Absolutely, give me Brandon Atwell.
Good call.
He can
Yeah, good call.
definitely do some damage. And for a final one, I'm I'm gonna go from my own team, and I'm gonna go Finn O'Donovan, because he's small, he's undersized, but there's no way the gorilla is getting hands on him. I've
Mm-hmm.
always said about Finn, you could do a one-on-one drill with Finn inside the phone box, and he'd beat you out of there untouched. Like,
Yeah.
he's slippery, hard to get a hand on. So I reckon he could definitely do some, get some sneak damage in there, evade capture for a good while, maybe tire the gorilla out and beat him there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's my
I
five
like
there.
I like that 5. I like that 5. I was wondering because you're going quite strong and heavy there with the first 4. You're trying, like you're saying, you're going man on man, and then you kind of try to get the speedster as number 5, which is good. I would go for a sort of 2 and 2, heavy and speedster, and you took one of mine in Robbie Alexander for sure, because he's probably about the same height as the gorilla standing up anyway, so he would definitely make it into the team. I would have to get, and this is, if we're going from our own team, I'm going to have to go for a bit of bias, because probably as wide as a gorilla is Lee Toomey,
Hmm.
one of the linemen for the Rhinos. He would be able to go man on man with him too. And then you need 2 quick guys, I think. And I think that Finn is a good show. I like Finn for sure. But I think what you're going to need to see also is you're going to need to see Dougie from UCD. That man cannot be tackled either. So he's going to have to be in with a shout of that too. And it's a tough one then on the other side. Maybe you'd want someone who also that he can't catch. And I'm going to go for someone that has only arrived in the AFI but has made a big splash since he's done that. And that's a Rayshawn Boswell, because he can't be catched either, and he cannot be tackled. And then For my fifth guy, see, this is where it gets a little interesting. I'm going for the sacrificial lamb that will keep the gorilla occupied, destroying him because he knows he's not going to get away. And that's, of course, Mr. One-legged himself, Sean McVay, is going to have to sacrifice himself. He's only got one knee, so he's already halfway dead anyway. So I think he will have to be the sacrificial, and then so the other lads can get the job done. There's going to always in war, there's collateral damage.
Absolutely. That's it sounds like we've got a solid squad there, and that's only 10 we've named. So surely 100 lads that have enough to take 'em.
Well, look, after you facing them on Sunday, I'm sure there's a few Vipers lads that will make that list as well, both on the offensive and defensive side, which we will get into in a little bit. A few comments came in too, and this is the Harambe episode that you've been waiting for all these years. And all I
Yes.
do is I try and please you, Alex, and this is how I could do it for you. And then, of
Yes.
course, Aaron,
R.I.P.
the only
Harambe.
and Alex, the only gorilla I want to wrestle.
Absolutely.
That's
Love
some
it.
compliment. Some compliment saying that you were like a gorilla. I like that. Fair play. We have 4 games to review tonight, and then we have another 4 games to preview as well this weekend. So after the week break, we are straight back into things. We're going to start in the Premier Division and Saturday night's game, the Friday night lights game, or Saturday night lights game, I should say. That is the Battle of Belfast. The Trojans take it 44 points to 13. Dom Lynn with 5 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown on top of that. 2 of them were to Michael Ferris, 1 to James Lynn, 1 to Max Dimitrov, and 1 to Noah Ben-Hameen. Rayshawn Boswell also contributed with a customary rushing touchdown, which he gets at least every game at this stage this season. On the night side of things, Liam Moores made his return at quarterback, and he connected with Mari Cassie late in the 4th quarter. Malcolm McCurry had a rushing touchdown as well. After a long pass from Liam Morris to Zach McDowell, and put them in the red zone so they could punch the score in. A convincing victory for the Trojans in this game. They continue their perfect start to the season. They, of course, had only their first. This was their homecoming game as well this year in Darramore. Obviously, everything they do when they're up in Darramore is fantastic. They put on a great spectacle. Anyone that hasn't been to a game in Darramore, I fully recommend that you do go and see one. Saying that, I still haven't had a chance myself, but it will happen this year, I promise. Yeah, on the night side of things, very disappointing for them to probably not be as close to the Trojans as they would have hoped at the start of the game. You know, I wonder, Alex, and we talked about this previewing the game, whether you go with Liam Moores or whether you continue with the hot hand and Zach McDowell. They decided to go with Liam on his return. In hindsight, would you still agree with that decision, or would you have maybe gone with Zach in this game?
Oh, I think it's a really tough decision to make. They had to choose, one way or the other. And I think if they had lost, the other way around, with Zach at QB, they'd have probably been cursing that they didn't start Liam. I think, I think it's always the best play to have your strongest players available, and putting Liam Moores in a quarterback. And Zach might be as good a quarterback as Liam is, but Zach is also a fantastic wide receiver. So I think putting all of your strengths out there, I think was probably the way to go. So I wouldn't hate on the move too much. It seems like the Trojans were ready for either player, and they defensively performed very well, and obviously, as we've seen offensively, they were also immaculate. So I can't really pick too many holes with for the Knights for making that decision. But it looks like the Trojans were going to rule the day regardless. You're on mute, Daragh.
No, sorry. With that win, and now with the Trojans as well, they, like I said, can go 4-0, but pretty much, barring a monumental collapse, which I don't think either of us see happening, they have pretty much punched their ticket in for the playoffs this year. Of course, still 4 games to play left for them, including a home game against the Rebels coming up this week, which is going to be an interesting test as well. Because with but going back to the night sort of side of things, this was sort of the litmus test, you could say, for the Knights to see if they were ready to start not being in the playoffs. I still think they're going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but maybe going further in the playoffs and maybe dreaming of a return to a Shamrock Bowl game. Perhaps this game kind of shows maybe they're one more year away to just fine tune a couple of things before they can really challenge and get to the Shamrock Bowl.
Yeah, I think offensively they are a very young squad, so there is still development to be done there. Like they're an excellent team, but there is still some development to get done. You learn from late games like these where you get beaten by a team who's clearly better than you. They'll be looking at the tape. They'll be trying to learn from it, and there is of course a chance we see a rematch of this in the playoffs. And the Knights will be keen to ensure that the margin is significantly lessened and probably want to even, have a chance of winning that game. So they'll be doing everything they can to learn from this game. Again, yeah, there's no pushing the panic buttons or anything. We kind of said that if the Knights could win this or keep it close, that would show us that they certainly have the potential to play in the SBC. With the margin of victory for the Trojans, I think it's clear that there is a top two in this division, and it is UCD and the Trojans, and then there is that gap to who's going to take up those third and fourth seeds. At the minute, I'd still definitely be pegging the Knights to make an appearance in one of those slots. But I think that they agree with you that they don't potentially quite have the firepower yet to take one of these teams on in the playoffs and down them and end up in a Shamrock Bowl. But stranger things have happened, so we'll see what happens in July.
Yeah, I'm not saying it to put down the team in any way. We'll stress that point. They are a team that is on the up. They are a team, even just seeing the sort of numbers on the sideline from the tapes we've seen this week, the club is in a very healthy state, which is fantastic. They have a very successful flag and youth setup as well. So that helps that conveyor belt of talent coming through to the seniors all the time. So they're doing the right things, which is great to see. Like that, Liam and Zach especially are products of the youth team, and that's how they've come up, and that's how they've been able to perform as well as they have from a very young age. They've had those years of playing football even in the youth ranks, and that's why youth football, every team should try and set up a youth program. It's an easy way to sort of get players in as often as you can. For both teams next up, the Rebels are traveling to Darragh this Saturday to take on the Trojans, and then on Sunday the Cowboys travel to Belfast to take on the Knights on Sunday. So a quick turnaround for both teams, for the Trojans to continue that momentum and for the Knights to get back on track. So we'll get into those games a little more later on. Going to Sunday in the Premier Division, the South Dublin Panthers 6, the Cork Admirals 36. On the Panthers side of things, Jason Vanocchini had a passing touchdown to James O'Leary. Just on a side note for James, I think it was his first proper game back since he did his ACL over a year ago. So congratulations to him on getting the touchdown on that. Jay Kennedy had 3 passing touchdowns on Sunday. 1 to Michael Halliday, 1 to Aaron Hogan, and 1 to Adam Jer. Jake himself had a rushing touchdown, and so did Marty Mulray. With this win and with a result that we'll get to later on in Division 1, it also means that no team this season is going to finish 0-8. So that's a positive. That's a good thing. No one is going to have a losing season this year. We've had them too many over the last few years with teams. It's good to see that teams are able to sort of not celebrate, but being able to put wins, or in the case of the Panthers and the Vikings and the Stags and the Giants at this moment in time, at least some sort of draw, so that because nothing's worse than the feeling of losing. Alex, do you see that as a positive in the leagues as a whole? Not having any team that is getting finishing 0-8. or is it that teams are coming to sort of their natural tiers, if you know what I mean?
No, I think, as you say, it's a positive. Like as someone, we've both experienced 0-8 seasons. It's like it's tough. It's a hard slog, and it's really not enjoyable at times. So you always want to be out there picking up points, however they come. I think it's a positive for the league. It shows that there's no like real outlier at the bottom. There's no real whipping boy in the league, so to speak. In previous years, we've seen it where there is a very clear team that's 0-8, and usually their points differences in the hundreds by the time you're in game five or something like that. It's not great for the league. The team losing isn't really learning much by losing, by 50 points every game, and the winning team probably isn't gaining a whole lot of it out of it either. So seeing that everyone now has picked up points and teams have also, by and large, looked competitive in a lot of games as well, I think that's a good thing for the league. It kind of shows that there is a certain like low, there's a floor for the standards of the league, and that is getting higher. I think that can only be looked on as a positive.
Mm-hmm. On the game itself, good Cork finally able to get over the line and get that win. Also, finally able to sort of get some points on the board. That's what we wanted to see this week. With the 36 points, is that enough for you to think that they are going to be fine for the rest of the season, or do you still think you need to see a little more?
I think it's a fine start, certainly. It's what we talked about. We wanted to see points. It's a lot more than they had scored to date. The ball was spread around plenty as well. 3 passes from Jake to 3 different receivers. Marty Mullery even getting in on the action, running in a short touchdown there. So yeah, no, I think the Admirals are going to be happy with their day. I'm sure they probably think there were things out there that could have done better, but it's all about getting that connection with your wide receivers and getting the offense moving the ball. Um, it's really going to be interesting now, the Admirals' next game, because I think they're playing the Rebels, and that could be a really key one in deciding who gets that fourth seed there, third, fourth seed, obviously, because the Knights are still up in the air as well. So those last 2 seeds now, that's going to be a really key game for deciding who finishes up in one of those spots.
Yeah. And for the Panthers side, just from being at the game on Sunday and from what I saw, I feel like they're going to kick themselves. I feel like that despite the scoreline, despite losing by 30 points, I feel like that they should rightly think that they could have won that game. They moved the ball quite well in a number of drives, but it was, an inability to convert the fourth and short here. It was, maybe a silly pick there, um, that they came close to, getting more scores on the board, making this game tighter, which would have been interesting to see. Because when it got to the second half, it was a little, when the game was beyond doubt, the Admirals brought in a few backups and a few young guys to give them a start. But I wonder if they were able to keep it closer for longer, what we would have seen there, with the Admirals, start to the year, and maybe would have that got into their heads, and maybe something could have happened. But Panthers well worth more than the 6 that they've scored. I know scoring has been an issue for them this year, and also a sense of when it rains, it pours, because there was multiple injury stoppages in the game, and it seemed to always be, obviously bar a few instances, but it seemed to always be a Panthers player. And it's just for a team that is struggling already at the moment to have guys go down. The quarterback Jason was only playing because their other quarterback Connor Murphy is injured. Um, I think, was it Connor Hoskins was hurt in the last game. He was able to play this one, which was great. He wasn't on as much on both sides, which was probably the right thing to do, because the likes of him, Luke Carey, the O line is really an unsung hero of the Panthers, I must say. Some really good players on that. Those guys, that sort of core group as well is going to really sort of get the Panthers out of trouble. And you don't want to be running the likes of Connor into the ground before you get to these sort of winnable games. And when I say winnable games, it's their next game on the 18th of May, which is going to be at home to the Cowboys. That game is crucial because I fear they lose that game and it could be curtains, because I don't see a win coming anywhere else on the board when they still have to play the Trojans again. They still have to play UCD, and they still have to play the Knights, I believe, as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be I can't see any other win coming along there. If they don't beat the Cowboys, it's going to be a long end of the season for them, and I fear for what could happen. On the Admiral side of things, like you mentioned, they go up against the Rebels on the 17th of May, which is interesting because the Rebels would have just played the Trojans. So if the Rebels lose that game and the Admirals then win this game against the Rebels, they have the tiebreaker over the Rebels. And if it comes to who has to finish fifth or fourth, with that tiebreaker, it could be absolutely crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, for the Panthers, it's been a really hard slog of a season. They're probably got the most important match of their season now in 2 weeks' time. So good to hear that there was some positives to take from it, that they were moving the ball, and there's certainly things they can look at to try and improve that going forward and get some scores, because the Cowboys have hardly been free scoring either. So if they can move the ball, and it might only take, say, 2 scores to beat the Cowboys. So it's good to hear that there was some positivity and wasn't all just one-way traffic necessarily. I think they're in a really tough spot with injuries as well. It's kind of been the season from hell for them. It's certainly been the worst season the Panthers have had in a long time. Possibly since they were, the Dragons or something like that. We're going back a long time. But look, they've just got to keep positive, keep the heads up, and keep fighting, because they know that there is still something to fight for. I do worry for them if they were to lose that game against the Cowboys and then really have nothing left to fight for, how the rest of the season plays out. But they're not going to be worrying about that for now. They've just got to focus on this Cowboys game and putting all of the things in place that they can to enable them to come out with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on then to the Division 1 game starting on Saturday. We had our first draw in Division 1 of the season. That was the Antrim Stags 16, the Causeway Giants 16. For the Stags, Scott McLean had 2 passing touchdowns, one to Jay Burton and one to Owen Delargy. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm very sorry. On the Giants side of things, Nathan Chapman also contributed with 2 passing touchdowns of his own, one to Ronan McCluskey and one to Ruin Austin as well. The Giants and the Stags get their first points of the season. I guess it's a strange, strange coming out of this game and seeing the reactions of both teams. Not in a bad way, but with the Stags being just a new team, their aim for this year was to just make sure they play every game and then see what happens. And they have done that so far, and now they're after getting their first points on the board after this game on Saturday. With the Giants side of things, they also started 0-3. They wanted to win this game. They were desperate to win this game, obviously, to get the season back on track. A draw is not the end of things. It makes the run for the playoffs tougher. It means there's no more mistakes allowed if they want to make top 4. But it's still technically possible. But Alex, your sort of view on this game after seeing, I don't know if you got to see any tape of it yet, but your view of the 16-16 draw.
Well, look, it's certainly a happier point for the Stags. All credit to them. They went out there, got the first points or first point of the club's history. That is absolutely something to celebrate. No matter what way you slice it. It was against another team that were 0-3, but that is a point to celebrate. Fair play to the lads. I think we sort of, I think speaking collectively, I would say we all were slightly skeptical about the Stags' fortunes, how they were going to fare this season. And I think they've proved us wrong, like considerably. I've been really impressed with their ability to stay in games, and their ability to put up points. I think like we probably judged them on how the Jets and Razorbacks sort of clubs seasons ended the last 2 years, really, and didn't really give them much of a chance. But they've kind of proven that they've got a culture there that's separate to maybe the culture of the two of those clubs, and they've maybe made some changes at a certain levels, whether it's coaching or board level, and they seem to be doing things right at the minute. This is, yeah, as I said, this is definitely a point to celebrate for them, and they'll know that their work isn't done. They've got more games to play. They've 4 games left, or 3 games left now
Yeah,
to play.
4 games.
Four games left to play.
Four.
They'll be playing each one of those games with I think a little bit more bounce in their step now. They've got a point. Like it's not a win, sure. It's definitely not a win. They'll still be looking for that, but you you've sort of you've kind of shown yourself to be something. You've got a point. You've put it up against a team who were Shield winners last year. The Giants went home with a trophy at the end of last season. So it's
Hmm.
uh it's not like they're beating a nobody out there or drawing with a nobody out there. So I'm going to give them huge credit for this, and fair play to them. And yeah, look, they've got 4 more games to go out and show what else they have for us. On the Giants side of thing, they're going to be disappointed with that. They're going to come out of this disappointed. They've got to be massively disappointed with their season as a whole. It it has been an unlucky season in a lot of respects. They're 3-1 with a points difference of -17, I think, is it? Like
Yeah,
they're a
yeah.
couple of whiskers away from having some wins and being right in this playoff mix. But at 3-1, I think that it's going to be really difficult for them to make the playoffs now. Uh, they've got a lot of good teams left to face. Now they've shown that the good big teams isn't necessarily a struggle for them. They narrowly lost out to the Minotaurs, who are a great team as well. But it's not been able to finish these matches where they've
Hmm.
gone ahead in or played against teams that they finished above last year. They're really going to be ruining some of their offensive output. But look, they're going to take it as a learning team. They are a young club, relatively speaking. Uh, they've got some development to themselves to do. Last year um, was the sort of, not a blip, but it kind of they went beyond everyone's expectations last year, and that kind of put heightened
Hmm.
expectations on them this year, which can be hard
Yeah.
to live up to. And when you don't live up to them, that can see you catching a lot of criticism that you wouldn't have caught if they'd had a normal season last year where they won 1 or 2 games. We wouldn't see this as
Mhm.
such an egregious record that they have with the 0-3-1. But because they set that kind of standard last year, we expected more from them, and I'm sure they expected more from themselves as well. But look, they're the same as the Stags. They've got 4 more games to go out there and show us what they've got. Um, so yeah, I look forward to seeing how they face the rest of the season with as difficult as it will be. They'll go out fighting, and I think they'll still have um a bit to prove themselves. I think they'll play hard. Like the Stags are going to play with an extra bounce. The Giants are nearly going to play with an extra bounce to be like, no, we're not this bad. We're not a winless
Mhm.
team. We're not the quality of a winless team. They're going to go out in their next game against the Crusaders and think we could have beaten you down in Newbridge, but we feel like we had some bad luck. You're up on our patch now, and we're going to get you back for that one. So I expect them to play with a bit of venom in that game, and hopefully they can, come out and put it together a performance that's worthy of a win.
Yeah, it's why I'm not exactly ruling them out of playoffs just yet, because they still have to play teams that will be in that conversation with them to get into playoffs, so they can still have a say in who's going to make playoffs. Because, like you mentioned, their next game's at home to Kildare, the return fixture after the previous one. They then go to yourselves in Loud. They then go to Dublin to face the Rhinos, and then they finish up at home to the Eagles. Those teams, like three, 2 wins, is still going to have a big say in this season. It's going to have a big say as well when it comes to head-to-heads as well. So they still need a little help from other teams and a few permutations to work out, but it's not all doom and gloom finished yet when they're trying to get for the top four. And like you said, they still have to play with that pep in their step. They still moved the ball well. They still defended well as a unit for the whole. I think they got beaten up for a big touchdown for the second one. As well, which was kind of just missed by the DB, and he just misjudged the flight of the ball. So, like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. It's going to be tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's going to be an easy run. It's going to be tough. There's going to be times where you're going to have to dig in, and you're going to have to put in that extra bit of effort when you're feeling tired in the fourth quarter just to try and get over the line. But it's not completely out of the question. Like I mentioned, their next game is the Kildare Crusaders, and that is on the 18th of May. The day before, or sorry, that's on the 17th of May. Sorry, the day after, the Stags welcome the Vipers to New Forge, like I said, on the 18th, which will be a game where maybe before this weekend thought that the Vipers could run away with, but now the Stags are going to think that they are in with a real shot to win that game for sure. And we'll move on to the Vipers because they came up against yourself, Alex, and the Mavericks. A 62-12 victory for the Loud Mavericks. Despite going 6-0 up earlier on, the Vipers did succumb to the offensive output of Ty Henry, and obviously the rest. It's obviously not just Ty, but Ty himself had 5 passing touchdowns on the day, 2 rushing touchdowns to go with that. Grant Shute caught 2 of those passing touchdowns and contributed a rushing touchdown of his own. Finn O'Donovan and Oisin Finn were the 2 other the 2 other
recipients of his passes.
Recipients. Thank you very much. English is tough. I'm very sorry. On the Viper side of things, Neil Murray connected with Lewis Leckie for a passing touchdown late in the game. It was AJ Gross, I think it's pronounced, with a rushing touchdown early on in the game for the Vipers. So, Alex, give us the breakdown of the game on Sunday, coming away with another huge win, another game which the team scores 60 points.
Yeah, look, happy to come away with the win in the end. It certainly wasn't easy. The Vipers came out and scored a touchdown on their first offensive play. Just broke a run with AJ the Goose or Goose. He was running like a wild goose. Anyway, he was milling through us. Big South African guy, rugby player, runs with some venom, like a true viper. He took nearly 3 miles to take down every time. He ran the ball extremely well. So he ran for a good 50-yard touchdown on the opening play after we had a poor kick coverage by us. They got the ball up to the halfway line and then ran in that touchdown on the opening play. I think the key block on that play was hit by D-Mex, the referee, and our Buck linebacker got blocked by him. Look, the referee's going to be lined up in certain places on the play. You got to get around him and make the tackle. But our linebacker was particularly aggrieved at that. But so they hit that touchdown. We came back on the field, and the Vipers actually got us to, I think, about 4th and 18 or so on our offensive drive, and it was kind of like, if you get stopped here, or they turn the turn the ball back over to them, it kind of is a bit like, oh look, this is interesting. But Ty, of course, did Ty Henry things and converted that long one on fourth down, and we got down the field and were able to punch it in. And kind of settled the side then, and we were able to keep putting up scores while they defensively able to slow down the Vipers a bit more. But yeah, they were a tough side. They played well, ran the ball really really efficiently. Wasn't too much passing on the day, but they did get one passing touchdown where our safety tried to intercept the ball and just ended up popping it up into the wide receiver's hands to go for a long touchdown. But yeah, and then offensively, it seemed like our offense was really able to do what they wanted to do out there, which is a good sign. Not really that surprising when you've got the experience of Ty Henry lining up there and throwing the ball and dealing it. We were able to put up quite a few scores on their defense that just wasn't able to adjust. But they never give up running. The Vipers, they were laying hits on us all day. The head certainly never dropped. So it was a good game, good clean game. Enjoyed it, and we're more than happy to get down the road with a win and 3-0 record.
Yeah. Sorry, I should mention as well, I got the scores wrong. Grant had 3 receiving touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. That was the scoring, because it didn't make sense. There was 1 receiver missing from Ty's 5 passing touchdowns. But like I said, another game that you were able to score 60 in and keep the offense below 30. Must be very happy, especially with how both sides, all 3 phases, you say, of the football, because obviously the special teams are performing extremely well too. For the Vipers side of things as well, this was never the game that was going to determine their season. This was never the game that we felt that they should win. They're beating the teams, to no disrespect, that they should at the moment. The test now is going to come, how they bounce back after this against the Stags in a couple of weeks' time in Newforge. That's going to be a very, very interesting game. The Stags result and the Vipers result. Yourselves, Alex, and the Mavs welcome the Minotaurs this Sunday to Dundalk. Your technical homecoming game, considering the other one was not played, the first home game was not played in Dundalk. So that's going to be exciting for sure.
Absolutely, our first of 3 home games in May in Dundalk. So yeah, looking forward to kicking off that run of home games, and yeah, should be a good one. Now, looking forward to welcoming the Minotaurs down. It's probably been about 2019, I think, since we last played the Minotaurs. I think there was the season before they went up, or was that season they went up? But anyway, we've loved playing the Minotaurs over the years. Always a tough physical game. I think this game against the Vipers was probably good practice with their hard runners there. We'll hopefully be sharpened up on our tackling from that week. Ready to meet Rafa Montero in the backfield there, another hard physical runner. So yeah, really looking forward to the matchup.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and we'll get into that there in a few minutes' time. Anything else, Alex, you want to add to that game before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's all.
No. Excellent. Excellent. That is a review of last week's games. Moving on to this week's games. And we have, like I mentioned, 4 for you, 2 in Premier Division, 2 in Division 1. We'll start in the Premier Division and Saturday's game, which is the 4-0 Belfast Trojans welcoming the 2-1 Dublin Rebels to Daryl Moore. Such an interesting game, with the Rebels bouncing back after their first game disappointment with 2 wins in a row, 2 convincing wins. I know, despite one of them not actually technically finishing due to player injury, but they were well on the way to a convincing win at the time. And then the Trojans, obviously 4-0, and absolutely soaring at the moment, with some fantastic offensive play and defensive play to match up with that too. crucial, Alex, for me in this one is the matchup between Kenny McCarthy and Rayshon Boswell. I think that's it. If Kenny can keep Rayshon from breaking out runs and can keep him quiet, the Rebels have a huge chance in this game.
Yeah, look, it's a big test for the whole Rebels defense. I think they will be a test that they've not seen since that week 1 game against the UCD squad. So um, it's going to be a really interesting one. As you said, like in that last match the Trojans played, we saw a different Trojans. Like we are having called the Trojans a Russian side this year. But Dom put together an all-time performance on Sunday with his 5 passing touchdowns, really lit it up and played in a way that certainly we didn't expect. Whether or not the Knights expected it might be another question. You know, they certainly weren't able to slow it down by much, being able to put up 40 points. I think that's probably going to be the barometer as well for how well the Rebels are and can they get one of those playoff spots. What is the margin versus what the margin the Rebel or the Knights put up against the Trojans? Can their defense slow down that attack where, if Kenny is selling out to stop Rayshon, is Dom going to be able to put 5 touchdowns on them again? Or are they going to have to maybe rethink and be a bit more balanced, play, be a bit more honest and play both the run and the pass? Because now we've seen that the Trojans can do it with both styles. I think that's definitely going to be a key question for the game.
Yeah, and with the Rebels as well, sticking with their defense for the time being. And while we're talking about them, the one thing that the Rebels I don't think have been able to do enough for their own liking, and I'm sure they'd be the first to tell you, is consistently pressure the quarterback, rush the quarterback. Um, like you said, if it is the case where Kenny is able to look after, whether it's not just obviously it's not just um Rayshon, they have a plethora of rushing attackers there that they can go to. It's not just Rayshon, but if they decide then to put the ball more in Dom's hands, the pass rush has to make sure it gets home, or the pass rush has to make sure that it's disciplined to keep him in the pocket, because his legs can be just as dangerous as Rayshon, and we've seen this season actually, because he's been playing quite well this season. He can definitely hurt you through the air too.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're 100% right, and that's probably going to be the key battle there. As you said, it's definitely going to be involving Kenny and what can he do to sort of control his unit there and keep the Trojans on the back foot and not have them just building up momentum and being able to put together 40 points like they did this weekend just gone.
Mm-hmm. And then on the Rebel side of things, obviously they have been starting to use Sam Doran's legs a lot more, and using him as a different type of weapon as well as passing, which has been really good. Pete McMahon has played fantastically since he's come back now to play in Ireland too. And with Tommy Breslin getting the 3 touchdowns last week, he is going to be on a high and want to continue that run too. But it's not going to be easy against this Trojans defense that has been, especially in the backfield, ball hogs and have been just taking the ball away from quarterbacks.
Yeah, again, also it's going to be a huge test for Sammy, young QB, um, against this really good Trojan secondary. The likes of Max Dimitrov is a threat to take away the ball anytime you put it in the air. So it's going to be, the Rebels are going to have him really prepared. I think they've had a nice amount of time to prepare for this game, whereas the Trojans will have had all of their focus on the Knights and will now be shifting to Rebels. So I do think the Rebels might have a slight advantage there in that they'll have been able to prep a lot more than the Trojans will. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they can come up with offensively and can they yield more scores than the Knights did last week.
Mm-hmm. So predictions, who are you going for?
I think the Trojans win it and keep rolling, but I'm going to say the Rebels keep it closer than the Battle of Belfast was.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think at the moment the Trojans are more of a team ready than the Rebels. This year was going to be a rebuilding year for the Rebels after the amount of losses they sustained. So yeah, I think the Trojans to win this game and I think it's playoff clinching if they win. I think it's officially playoff clinching. Um
Sounds right. You know.
um sorry, Paul. Sorry. We have to be honest. That's the one thing that we're always here with you. We're always going to be honest. Um, but yeah, so I think that it's the case that the Rebels do succumb to a defeat in this game. But Paul, on the bright side of things, you'll get to right the ship quickly the week after against the Admirals, which will be actually a really, really good game to watch, which we'll preview again next week when the game is on the horizon. On Sunday,
And then the other
the
bright
night.
side, you know, you'll have an extra
Yeah,
free hour on a Tuesday evening to do with what you want if you're not listening to us.
exactly. There's probably 100 better things to do than listen to us, but we appreciate that you do and that you have up to this time. And look, we'll send you off to pasture and be in the podcast ways. Thank you very much for that. Knights 2-2 at home to the Cowboys 1-2. The Cowboys have had quite a long break after their game against the Rebels a few weeks ago. The Knights, of course, are coming straight off that defeat to the Trojans last week. The Knights are going to want to make sure that they get back on track, that this was only a blip this week and get back to scoring and winning ways. Alex, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, it's another one where the Cowboys have had a lot of time to do film review, look at how the Knights are playing, and pick up tendencies, see where they can get at the Knights, and maybe they've got to be working on their own offense in that time. I assume that's got to be the majority of the focus for the coaches there because they haven't put up points with any ease at all yet this season. So what we really want to see from the Cowboys is more offensive output, and I think it's certainly when you play a team a week against the week after they've just put in a disappointing performance after been relatively hyped up. I mean, everyone's favorite podcaster in the country picked them in a huge derby match last week, and they lost. So they've embarrassed his immaculate reputation. His hair, sort of the sheen of his hair, is a little bit lessened this week because of it. So
I
if
thought
there's
it
ever
looked a little darker, all right.
that's the reason, man. So if there's ever a time you could catch a team on the hop, it is a game like that where they've suffered a blow and there might be slightly lower on confidence. Uh, the key there will be coming out quickly. Maybe they'll have 10, 15 scripted plays for the offense to be like, we've practiced these 15 plays every weekend and every midweek session we've had since we've last played. And these are the 15 players we'll be running against the Knights because we think they'll work. And say they get up a score, keep the Knights out, run those plays again and get up a second score. Then I could actually see the Cowboys coming out on top in that scenario if they have really prepared well and can catch the Knights on top, and the film work pays off there. Um, but on the other hand, there's also the side where the Knights could be like, we've just lost this game. People are writing us off now, kind of saying like, oh yeah, well they're a good side, but they're not going to contend for the Shamrock Bowl this season. Maybe they'll be, so folks are right. We've got to come out hot here and blow this Cowboys team away and prove that we're still, in with a shot here. We're not anything to be written off. So it could go one or two ways. I think it's an exciting game for that reason. So yeah, I think it's one to look forward to for sure.
Mm-hmm. Just a little conscious of time, so we'll get into it quickly here. Predictions for the game.
I'm gonna say Knights win, and I'm gonna say the Cowboys put up 2 touchdowns at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Knights myself, I think, are going to win this game. Like that, I think two scores as well is a good prediction to make. Um, for the Cowboys, yeah, I want to see what they've done these past few weeks to give Owen Hughes the best um, chance to succeed, to sort of move the team forward for the more crucial games, like that game against the Panthers in a few weeks, you know, because that's going to be the game that's going to determine their season, not this one. So, yeah,
Hopefully they'll be a
in
bit
this
healthier as well.
exactly. So for me, a Knights win in this one to get them back on the winning track and to sort of maybe cement that third or fourth spot to make sure they go to the playoffs. Division One, moving on to that, we'll try and get through these as quickly as we can. Uh, on Saturday, the Kildare Crusaders play host to the West Dublin Rhinos in a huge matchup in when it comes to playoff placings for the rest of the season. Crucial for obviously the head-to-head records too, because both teams are currently on the same number of points. The Rhinos are coming off their 21-0 victory against the Stags on Easter weekend. As for the Crusaders, they are coming off a loss down in Wexford to the Eagles. So both teams are 2-2 heading into this game. Alex, I'll go to you on this one first, as the person who's not involved in the game. What are you looking at in this game?
Yeah, huge one here. These two teams do not like each other. There's always been a bit of healthy rivalry in these matchups, and a bit of shouting and barbing usually as well. So I think both sides are going to be really fired up for this one, and I honestly think it could go either way. Um, we've seen the Crusaders have some success on the ground with Wello. Obviously, they're a wealth of experience, and through the air they still don't quite, they don't have those receivers that we've mentioned in previous years. So if their passing game is a little bit off color, the Rhinos can certainly take advantage, and they're a side well able to make turnovers, as I've experienced firsthand. They got a pick six against us. So that'll be an interesting battle. The Rhinos secondary there against Jordan Farrell, and then on the other side of the ball, we'll see who's taking the game under center this week. It's generally it's a guessing game sometimes. So you guys, we never know which cue is going to be there, lining it up. But you guys are certainly ferocious runners on the field. Great offensive line there. And yeah, we'll see what you can do against a Crusaders defense who's been okay this year, but not great. I don't recall any big, huge defensive plays made by the Crusaders in any games yet so far. I could be wrong on that, but yeah. So I think it's going to be a good test. I think both units match up well, so I think it's going to be possibly the game of the weekend in terms of drama, anyway.
It's going to really shock you now on Saturday when you see a certain number 79 rock out now at under center taking those snaps. Something must have had to gone very, 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 very wrong for that to happen now.
Snapping the ball to yourself as well.
Well, that would have to have been what would happen, because we must
Yeah.
have no one left at all if that's the case that I'm taking up the ball under center. That'll never happen. Or will it? No, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. Alex, prediction for the game.
I'm going to say the Rhinos win this one narrowly on the last drive of the game, kind of a job.
Excellent stuff. Your check is in the mail there for that. Thank you very much, sir. Moving on to you say the game of the weekend for the Rhinos and Crusaders. I think the game of the weekend now is going to be on Sunday in Dundalk. Top of the table clash between two undefeated sides. The Westmeath Minotaurs make the trip up to take on the Loud Mavericks. Like we mentioned, 4-0 versus 3-0. The Minotaurs have had a bit of a break. The Mavs are just coming off obviously their big win up north last week, so a quick turnaround for them. It's such an interesting game, despite despite the Minotaurs going 4-0, they've been in a lot of closer games maybe than they would have liked. Case in point, the game in Causeway against the Giants, whereas the Mavericks so far have blown away any team they played. The Eagles, Rhinos, and just last weekend, of course, the Vipers. But this is another level. This is another test against obviously the most recent SBC side to drop down. Still have some great SBC quality players. The loss of Joe Kinahan this season has not been felt in Westmeath. Sean McCormick has played so well. I don't know if it has been a purposeful thing by the offensive coaches to sort of maybe add in a bit more, plays cater to him in terms of, he came most recently playing flag. I know he played kid quarterback before, but, getting those shorter crossing routes, getting those, easier check down passes to let the wide receivers who are with Rafa, probably the stars of the show, do the work with the likes, so many to name. Sean Dalton, Cottle Dunn, you've got some good young guys coming up. Damas Villas is the rookie this year who's played remarkably well, scored 3 touchdowns against ourselves. I don't know how they grow them up there in Mullingar, but they grow some really, really good wide receivers for sure. On your side of things, like I mentioned, it's kind of hard to talk about in terms of like we know how good we can see how good you have been this year. You see how good your offense is performing, how the defense is performing, how the special teams are performing. It's such a real cohesive unit start to the season. And I'm going to get killed because it's going to sound like I'm blowing a load of smoke up your arse, but you sent me a bit of money back, so I kind of have to do this, Alex, as well, don't I? But how's the team looking ahead of this weekend? How are the bodies? Are they healing? Hopefully no injuries coming out of the game on Sunday for yourselves, and hopefully a full panel to choose from.
Yeah, I think we're mostly healthy, all right, and available this weekend. Nothing too serious out of the Vipers game. Few bruises and sore bodies, but nothing out of the ordinary for a game week. Look, we have been focused on the Vipers, so it was only really Monday morning, kind of getting that focus switched over to the Minotaurs now, and they've had a longer break to, as we've mentioned with other teams, to sort of do that film watching and really get stuck into the tape there. So I think it does give you a little bit of an advantage, but at the same time, we feel like we have a bit more momentum. We were definitely slow and rusty to start that Vipers game again, as evidenced by the first play touchdown by the Vipers, and our offense getting a bit sluggish on that first drive as well. So we hopefully have that rust knocked off. So that'll serve us well as well, I think, in the game. And yeah, we're just really looking forward to pit our unit against theirs. I think certainly from a defensive perspective, as I usually speak, I'm really looking forward to going up against some SBC experienced players and sort of really testing our mettle against them, seeing what they can bring, and how differently they might do things to some of the other squads we've played yet this season without that sort of SBC experience. So yeah, that should be a cracker, and hopefully be a good day as well in Dundalk. So we'll be in our more comfortable surroundings as well, which is always good.
Well, fingers crossed for the weather. I think it's meant to be good this weekend, so I'm hoping so. And of course, hopefully, I'm hoping it's the return of the kebab pizzas.
Always
Good stuff. Right. Prediction time for this one. Yeah, I'm going to go with a Mavs win on this. I think the momentum is with you guys totally. The fact that I'm just looking at the standings here. That I think your points difference is almost double the Minotaurs already this year, despite playing one game less. Just shows how dangerous your offense is. Um, although on the bad side, Alex, and I'm very sorry to say this, I don't think you're going to score 60 points this week. You're going to have to make do with something less. Sorry. And you know what? It's only because as well, Ty didn't throw his customary pick six last week.
I
So
know. He
he's
actually got an
broken.
interception himself, so he's earning it back now. We
He's
kind of said to
actually
him, where we're like, you've got some work to do here. So he put himself on for a few plays defensively, and it came away with an interception, of course.
okay. Well, he's definitely sort of making it up to you guys for sure for that. And appreciate him trying for that. But yeah, I think a Mavericks win on this one. I think he's going to go to 4-0, with the Minotaur suffering their first defeat of the year. Could it be a draw? Maybe. But no, I'm going to go with a Mavericks win on that. I'm sure, Alex, you're the same. Back in your voice every day of the week.
I'll always back myself, to win a game, absolutely.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. I did see some of the video, though, which, by the way, big shout out to Paul McElwain, who has been fantastic this past weekend with his coverage. He was at the Stags game Saturday afternoon. He went to the Trojans game Saturday evening. He went to your game Sunday and put all that stuff out and clip videos and pictures. Absolutely fantastic. And
he's
from the video that
he's my goat for AFI photography. Just saying, big shout out to Paul.
Yeah, just unreal the work that he's been doing. Unreal that all the work that I've seen this year, actually. A real step up from all sort of AFI content creators, covers, whether it's photos, videos, or anything. Huge step up. It just shows how much interest we're getting in the league now, and it's great for guys to get that sort of exposure for themselves, for especially the ones that want to take it to the next level. There's loads of game tape and stuff for them there too, and everything.
We love to see it.
But I must say, there was one, I think it was one of your 2-point plays where normally you would be under center, but I saw a Mr. Harty there playing under center instead.
I went on holiday for like 4 days to England and I lost my job. Disgraceful. To Nathan as well, who also, took my job as quarterback back many moons ago when he came through from the flag team and was the QB after me. So yeah, look, man's been taking my job for years. It's nothing new. And I hate him. So yeah.
He's coming for linebacker next after this. You better watch out.
Well, it'd help maybe if he didn't get blocked by referees. So I wasn't going to sell him out earlier, but since you brought it up now, it was Nathan that was blocked by a referee for a touchdown. Yeah, so keep trying, Nathan. Come for the king, you best not miss.
All right, then. Well, look, that's going to wrap up this edition of this show. Before we go, this show and every show this season is brought to you by Rain Rocks Web Design. They're the guys behind UCP.ie. Fantastic crowd to work with. Really appreciate all the work that they've done. The league tables, the fixtures, the results are up there for you now. Follow us on our socials at UnderCenterPod on Instagram. And I'm also always forget, we're on TikTok as well. We post some game footage and stuff on that too. Just search us Undercenter Podcast. I have some stuff from the game on Cork, the Cork game on Sunday, and put more of that out as the week goes on. We'll keep the score updates there for you and everything. So make sure you're following us for the rest of this AFI season for sure. Alex, as always, thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate it.
And until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.